him for so many years. Before he became local government chairman, he went through 2 terms. After that, 2 terms in the House of Rep. So he is well known to me and definitely qualified to be minister. And therefore, I will urge all of you, according to the protocol that we have been following, that as a member of the House 2 terms, that he should also take a bow. And that's what I want to say. We are so happy that I'm actually speechless, which you all know I'm never speechless. Thank you very much.
Distinguished Senator Ireti Kenkibe. And my distinguished colleagues, is it the view of the Senate that the nominee should take a bow? Distinguished colleagues, we have before us Prince Abubakar Audu Jr. If we have your resume, if there is anything that you want to add to your resume to enable the Nigerian public know about you, and also our distinguished brothers and sisters, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Go ahead. Your Excellency, the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Godswill Obot Akpabio, Your Excellency, the Deputy Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Barau Jibrin, Your Excellencies, distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency, Mr. Senate President, with your permission, I would like to specifically acknowledge the senators from my state, the 3 senators from my state. I'd like to start with the senator from Kogi Central Senatorial District, Senator Abubakar Sadiq Ohere. Then I'll move to the senator from the Kogi Western Senatorial District, Senator Distinguished Senator Steve Karimi. And very importantly, the distinguished senator from my own zone, which is Kogi East, and my father-in-law. My father-in-law, yes. Distinguished Senator Jibril Issa Echocho. Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, I would also like to use this opportunity to specifically thank the Executive Governor of Kogi State, who has deemed it very fit and important to personally be here this evening, Alhaji Yaya Adoza Bello, the White Lion of Kogi State. I would also like to acknowledge our APC governorship candidate, Alhaji Usman Ododo, as well as the rest of the entourage here this evening. Your Excellencies, distinguished senators, my name is Prince Shuaib Abubakar Audu. I was born on 6th of November 1980. So I'm 42 years old. To the family of late Prince Abubakar Audu and late Hajia Habibat Rebecca Audu. Prince Abubakar Audu was a colleague of many of you distinguished senators here today. He was also a colleague of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Thank you all this evening. I would like to talk through my resume very briefly. I went to primary school in Plateau Private Primary School from 1986 to 1991 in Jos Plateau State, following which I went to Command Secondary School for 3 years, from 1991 to 1993, Command Secondary School in Kaduna. I then moved on to Igbinidion Secondary School in Benin City, Edo State, where I wrote my SSCE, Senior Secondary School Certificate, and graduated with 7 A's and 1 C. I then proceeded to the United Kingdom, where I went to the University of Leicester for 4 years. And I graduated with a bachelor's degree in business economics with a 2-1 degree. I went further to do my master's in MSc International Securities and Investment Banking from Henley Business School, University of Reading, UK. I then capped it off with a master's degree and MBA degree from the University of Oxford, United Kingdom. As you all know, University of Oxford is one of the finest universities in the world, and also the oldest university in this English-speaking world, at over 800 years old. My professional career over the last 20 years was spent in investment, corporate and investment banking, as well as asset and pension fund management. I spent the last 20 years at Stanbic IBTC Bank. I joined the then investment banking and trust company in the global markets division or treasury division for 2 years, where I traded fixed income securities and bonds. I then moved on subsequently to the pensions business when the Pensions Reform Act was signed into law by the then President Olusegun Obasanjo. We went ahead to set up Stanbic IBTC Pension Managers Limited, which is currently the largest pension fund administrator in Nigeria. I helped to set up the investment management desk, where I was the head of the investment management team. I then moved on to the asset management business of Stanbic IBTC, where I rose to become an executive director at the asset management subsidiary. The asset management subsidiary is also the largest asset management business in Nigeria. I also carried out that role concurrently with being appointed the Chief Executive Officer of the venture capital business at Stanbic IBTC, of which financials reported directly to the investment banking business. During my 20-year career, I spent some time at Bank of New York Mellon in conjunction with the banking company I was working with to manage the CBN FX reserves. There was an arrangement that was signed back then, which has since terminated. That arrangement allowed me to work and do some trainings at Bank of New York Mellon in Boston, Massachusetts. I also spent some time at Credit Suisse First Boston in the global headquarters at Zurich, Switzerland, where we helped to manage over $800 million of the CBN FX reserves. Having spent the last 20 years in investment banking and asset management, I decided to take all the skills I had gathered from the private sector to participate in partisan politics. And I ran for governor of Kogi State at the recently concluded elections, at the recently concluded primary elections in Kogi State. I was one of the leading candidates. There were 18 of us that went in, and I finished in 4th position. Initially, I had gone to court to challenge the outcome, but being a party man, and the fact that I remembered that my father, Prince Abubakar Audu, was one of the founding members of the All Progressives Congress in 2013, I wanted a solution that was in the best interest of the party, and decided to withdraw my court case and wholeheartedly support our governorship candidate. Having supported our governorship candidate, we also used the opportunity to thank the President of the Federal Republic for deeming it fit to nominate me as a ministerial nominee. I think this is the message to the world that the President is a talent hunter, and the President believes in giving the youth of Nigeria an opportunity to excel in their areas of competence or desire. And I want to also thank the governor of Kogi State for deeming it fit to put my name forward to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to nominate me as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I think I'll stop there and just use that opportunity to thank all the distinguished senators that are here today. Thank you very much, sirs. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Prince, Prince, we welcome you and we thank Mr. President for this nomination. May the soul of your late father rest in perfect peace. We also acknowledge the presence of the white elephant. Is it white lion? White lion, and one of the youngest governors ever produced in Nigeria, Governor Yahaya Bello. You even, I always tell you, you ran before the not too young bill was passed into an act of parliament. So welcome to the chambers. I know that everybody in Kogi would like to say something, but let me start with Senator Karimi.
Thank you, our esteemed President, my distinguished colleagues. Thank you, my governor, for being here. Mr. President, my colleague, the man before you is a well-schooled, well-mannered man. You can see his CV. There is no any adulteration in this CV. We are very proud of him. His NYC is very clean. Mr. President, I want to recall an incident in Kogi State in 2019. We had an election that was well conducted and running to an end. Suddenly, around 4-5 a.m., 2015, meant to say 2015. Suddenly, around 4-5 a.m., on the following day, the man that was winning the election, suddenly, he was no longer, he gave up. This is the man, this is the son of the man. And the man contributed a lot to Kogi State. He loved our state so much, he gave his all for Kogi State. Having his son as a minister is a tribute to the man.
So, in other words, you are lost for words. And you want to thank President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for going back to that heritage to produce a son of that family as an incoming minister, if confirmed by the Senate. Thank you so much for your contribution. Distinguished Senator Ningi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Let me join you, Mr. President, in congratulating the young minister nominee, Prince Shuaib. I don't like to call him a boy, but he's a young man that we are all proud of. And also thank President Ahmed Bola Tinubu for looking at young men like that. Mr. President, Shuaib is from Kogi State. And anytime I pass through Lokoja, two things comes to my mind. One, as a confluent state, and you see the water passing under that bridge, and you visit other countries of the world, especially developed countries, places like that are supposed to be a tourist attraction. And I want to ask Shuaib whether he also imagines so, and if he does that, if he's made a Minister of Trade and Tourism, what does he think of making Kogi a tourist attraction? My second question too has to do with the resources of Kogi as a fish producing community. It is a fishing producing community that is still archaic. You pass through Lokoja, you see a lot of fish, but there are no storage, there are no equipment, so there are no means of processing. So if you are made the Minister of Water Resources, what do you think you can do for your people in order for them to be able to have the state of the art in the fishing industry? Because you are a well-traveled man, I'm sure you see the fishing business in America, in Sweden, in Netherlands, what in Morocco, and even in Algeria. What will you do if you are made Minister of Water Resources and then you are saddled with that responsibility? That's my question.
Distinguished Senator Naida.
Thank you, Mr. President. My learned colleagues, I'm Neda Imaswain, Senator representing Edo South Senatorial District. Prince Audu, I congratulate you for this nomination. I recognize that you attended one of the finest schools in the world, beginning from your foray at the Igbidijo Education Center in Benin. Congratulations. Now, given your experiences in banking, I don't know what portfolio you'll be assigned to, but I want to think that you also will be in one of the advisory councils in economics of this country. What will you do to address this issue of our Naira devaluation? Because it's actually affecting trade and commerce and the overall well-being of Nigerians. What exactly will you do to help the President and the Economic Council in addressing the issue of our Naira devaluation? Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Sadiku.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, I want to put before you this afternoon or this evening that we have one of the most qualitative nominees, finest ever presented by any regime in this country, standing before you today. Mr. President, I am proud of my product and he's open to any question. Mr. President, we have here Prince Shuaib from Kogi State, well experienced and well trained with background on business, education, and economy. Mr. President, our duty this afternoon as a senator from Kogi State is that we are united. We are united to appeal to our colleagues to please accept this nominee as a nominee of the Senate, bearing from the fact that the nominee standing before you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, is an in-law to one of us, who has paraded very extensive credentials, and above all, he's a disciplinarian, industrious, and very, very hardworking young man that we believe that, if considered, will add well into the Federal Executive Council contribution to Nigeria more meaningful for all of us. But however, Mr. President, I will end by asking him how he's feeling now about the business community in Nigeria. The ease of doing business in Nigeria is gradually becoming a difficult one, especially judging from the recent hike in tariffs and all other things connecting to business. I will want him, Mr. President, to advise or explain to this Hello Chamber how he can use experience to advise the federal government on how to smoothen the ease of business, doing business in Nigeria. And beyond that, I want to appeal to my distinguished senators and colleagues that the nominee eventually should be allowed to take the leave of the Senate pending consider after he has successfully answered the questions. Thank you, sir.
Yes, distinguished brother Sadiku, you want him to take leave, and at the same time you are asking him question. So, but he has to answer the question here. Yes, let me recognize distinguished Senator Manu Haruna. Am I right? Haruna Manu, right? Okay, the distinguished senator from Taraba. No? Yes, the one raising his hand. Is he not the one? Huh? Is it Gombe? I'm right. Huh? But it's Manu. It's Manu. Distinguished Senator Manu, right? Huh? The one standing.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair. My name is Anthony Siakoyaro from Gombe South.
No. You know Senator Manu Haruna, the former deputy governor of Taraba. But I recognize you and you did not want to speak. So let him finish, then you can now talk. Please go ahead, Ishaku.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Nominee, we congratulate you for being here in the Senate for confirmation hearing, and we thank President Ahmed Bola Tinubu for inputting young blood into the system. We are very happy for that. Looking at your resume, fine banker, and I want to commend you also for walking through yourself, being your own. I mean, not relying on your background to be, to carry along yourself diligently all through your CV. What I want to note is, in case you are assigned to any finance portfolio, be it budget planning or Ministry of Finance, the general thinking in our parlance, in the government parlance, is that we go a borrowing, defining borrowing capacity as a percentage of GDP. I view that as extremely unrealistic. Unrealistic because when you come to paying back your debt or servicing it, you service it from revenue. So if you want to look at it realistically, Mr. Nominee, will you agree that it's better to, I'm talking this because of the background of our position of debt today, running to over 70, that let's look at it realistically as you continue to work, that when we are looking at capacity to borrow, that we look at our revenue, our capacity in our revenue, not GDP. Because when you are paying or servicing, you can't do it from that GDP. So let's not go a borrowing and go to the level that we cannot service or repay principal at a time. What's your thinking about that? Thank you.
Senator Manu Haruna.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Haruna Manu. I represent the good people of Taraba Central. Mr. President, even though I don't have the resume of the nominee, let me use this opportunity to congratulate him. From what I have heard, Mr. President, the nominee presented a very, very impressive credentials. And I'm happy, and I'm sure, at the same time, I know the youth in this country will be happy with Mr. President. Nominating not only youths, but youths that have the wherewithal when eventually this Senate confirms them, I know that they will bring their experiences to bear in this government. Mr. President, I commend Mr. President, and at the same time congratulate the nominee. Mr. Nominee, congratulations in advance. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Orwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Orwell Onyeso. I represent the good people of Rivers East. I'm not going to ask him a question. I'm going to make a remark about a young man, Prince Abubakar Audu. I see him as a marvel to behold. A very honest young Nigerian. Since we started this screening, from the papers they've submitted, he has paid the highest amount of tax to the federal government. He is a sound mind, a highly experienced, youthful Nigerian.
Yes, Senator Orwell Onyesu. I wanted to hear what you said. You said since we started screening, that the young man has paid the highest amount of tax, more than all the senators. So go ahead, take it again.
Yes, I mean, from among the nominees, and I see him as a very sound mind. For a young man, he's hugely experienced. He's clean, obeying, and supremely humble. Yes, because he's the son of a very renowned Nigerian governor, and whose in-law is also a senator. But you can see how humble he's been. I support his nomination, and I recommend him as the true mascot of the Nigerian youth. Don't disturb me. Allow me to say something. Mr. President, I support his nomination 100%. This young man does not need his father's name, nor his father-in-law's membership of the Senate to survive as one of those who should serve in the new ESCO that is coming up. I thank you, I thank members of the Senate, I thank the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's my remark.
Distinguished Senator Isa Jibrin Echocho. Nothing to add. Well, because if there is nothing to add, then yield the floor. You are the in-law. If there is nothing to add, then yield the floor to distinguished Senator Alero. Huh? Or is the in-law? So distinguished Senator Alero.
Come on.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting in the chair. My distinguished colleagues, Mr. Nominee. Mr. President, let me start by thanking President Commander-in-Chief for appointing our son to be the minister if confirmed by this Senate. I'm talking about class of 1999, and actually there are only two of us that are here. Class of 1999 governors, myself and the OG Kalu. So on behalf of all the class of 1999, let me thank Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for appointing this young man to serve in his cabinet, if confirmed by the Senate. Mr. President, I look at the CV of this gentleman. It is very, very rich. And in it, I found that he managed about $2 billion worth of pension fund. Presently, the Nigerian Pension Commission has well over 17 trillion naira in its kitty. And a lot of people are of the opinion that these pension funds can be used to fund the infrastructure, even though the head of the civil service of the Federation and many other civil servants are of the opinion that pension fund is not meant for that. But in many countries in the world, they use pension funds to fund the infrastructure. I want to ask the nominee whether it is advisable to use pension funds to fund infrastructure in Nigeria, because there is a serious deficit in our infrastructure and money is badly needed. And that's why we even go borrowing to ensure that we provide the necessary infrastructure for the economy to survive. And I want the nominee to comment on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Darlington Mokocha.
Order. Thank you, Mr. President of the Senate and dear colleagues. My name remains Darlington Mokocha. I speak for the entire Nigeria, but Abia Central in particular. Mr. President of the Senate, I want to express my happiness for the young man before us. That gives a whole lot of hope for the younger ones. And I want to commend the sitting governor that recommended you. Because coming from your background, what most people should have expected was a fisticuff, some kind of fight, rivalry. At the end of the day, you'll be subdued. But I can see from your resume that it's well studied. So you needed some level of visibility and exposure. And I thank God that today history has been made because you are standing before the Senate. Having known that your father passed through this route, and you're passing through another route, that is the executive. I'm very happy about that. I've looked through your resume. I just want to say one thing, because for whatever that is worth today, if you find yourself as one of the ministers, you have to encourage the youth to a very great extent. Encouraging the youth has to do a whole lot with technology, which is the hub of today's development globally. I want to know, what do you have to do about fintech? Because it has its own advantages and disadvantages. If we encourage the youth effectively to delve into, drive into, and have the central fulcrum of knowing all about fintech in today's Nigerian economy and globally, or otherwise to see how to arrest those disadvantages that had to do with fintech introduction in Nigeria. What will you do at the end of the day to help our economy in this direction? Thank you.
I think the nominee has enough questions to answer. And even this last one, because your appointment will encourage a lot of youth. And today you are a role model for Nigerian youth. So you speak to Nigerian youth through this question.
Distinguished Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and all the other distinguished senators present. I would take all the questions, the similar questions, I will try to combine them. The first question was on Kogi State being a place that can tap into tourism or fish producing community. What would we do to facilitate some of the water resources that are available in Kogi State for the benefit of the country? Just to mention, like you all know, distinguished senators, Kogi State is the confluence city where the longest rivers in Nigeria, River Niger and River Benue, meet. And based on that, as well as the habitat there are a lot of natural resources in Kogi State. I believe that some of the things that can be done to enhance tourism is already being done by the current governor in terms of infrastructural development. I think that the APC government can ramp up on that with the new administration that will come in after November, which would generally facilitate and help tourism across the state. It's important to know that there are various places and countries around the world, some of the things that they've done to succeed, which we can learn from. The likes of Dubai, which 50 years ago was almost a desert, today has unbelievable amounts of buildings, and most of their monies are gotten from tourism. I think that there are ways of learning from those environments even in terms of trying to even bring in some additional consultants to make some, additional recommendations from those environments. The water resources, I think some of the pollutions and some of the things that are done are affecting the habitat. I think those things need to be looked at diligently so that the habitat in terms of the water resources can be looked at, and that can grow the fishing and tourism industry. In terms of the other question from the distinguished senator from Edo South, Senator Imas Swen, what I would do to use my experience in banking, if I'm on the Economic Advisory Council, and how the Naira devaluation would be mitigated. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that liberalizing the FX policy was one of the most brilliant decisions that the President of the Federal Republic could have taken, and he took that decision on day one of this new administration, because the FX reserves was bleeding and a lot of money was being expended on defending the Naira when the parallel market was trading at a much higher rate and creating an arbitrage opportunity for people to take money where it's discounted and then make supernormal profits. And I think the President, with his experience, has done a great deal. I think once investors see, and they've acknowledged from the World Bank reports and from the international reports that have been generally coming out, it's clear that the decision is the right one. In terms of the amount of foreign inflows that have come in to Nigeria, that has increased. I think over time, once there's a build-up and the economic policy is heading in the right direction, it would enable us to be able to defend to be able to bring in additional foreign inflows, which will reduce some of the FX pressures that we're getting. So I believe that over time, as some of the key things are being put in place, whether it's in terms of ramping up production capabilities in agriculture and exporting various commodities from Nigeria, that would help to mitigate the devaluation problem. So I believe the devaluation problem is a problem that the President of the Federal Republic will tackle effectively over time. There was also the question of, in terms of ease of doing business, and what would be my advice to the federal government of Nigeria as a member of the Federal Executive Council, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed as a minister by these hollowed chambers. Just to mention that the Nigerian economy is a massive one. The total size of the GDP is $470 billion. So that has made us the largest and most important economy in Africa. Currently, we're the 30th biggest economy in the world. And I believe that with some of the measures that the President has put in place, I believe we can significantly tap into the potential of Nigeria and increase our rankings and move closer to being the top 20 and being part of the G20 economies over the President's 8-year tenure, which I believe he would definitely do by the special grace of God. There was also a question on the portfolio based on my experience, whether it would be trade and investment, or budget and planning, or finance, and the question around borrowing and versus the GDP ratio. Just to mention that, based on my experience over the last 20 years, like I mentioned, corporate and investment banking, those three portfolios would be ideal, either of any of them. But I think it's very important to make the point that I'm here to serve the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and whatever portfolio that the President deems fit to give me, I'm ready to serve the country with all my heart and give it my best. And I just want to assure the hollowed chambers here that I would defer and trust the judgment of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In terms of the borrowing rate versus the GDP ratio, is very clear that we have borrowed excessively relative to particularly revenue as opposed to the GDP ratio. If you look at the borrowing versus GDP, it's very easy to say there is still headroom to increase the amount of borrowing. But if you look at the revenue that is being generated by the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that leaves a lot to be desired. But I think it's also very important that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has put very concrete measures in place. I know, the process of removing the fuel subsidy could be painful, but is the right decision. And I think that is going to create a lot of room to be able to bring about development in the country. And the President has announced a number of palliatives that are ongoing, and discussions are currently being held on things like the minimum wage. And I think the bottom line is that once a number of all these measures are addressed, then the borrowing capacity of the government increases tremendously, and we can do more and make this country very great. There was also a comment on paying the highest amount of tax by distinguished Senator Orwell from Rivers, and I want to appreciate that comment. As a patriotic Nigerian, I'm very happy to pay my tax. But I think that, just to mention that a number of tax incentives can also be put in place, and the President has put in place quite a number of tax incentives very recently to make the business environment very friendly, and the President, in his wisdom, is taking the right measures. Just to also address the question on the 17 trillion assets in the pension fund space, which is very critical. Yes, I fundamentally believe that a significant chunk of that money should be used to fund infrastructure. Part of the problem is that we're facing in this country and in the pension environment is that a lot of this long-term money is being used to invest in short-term investment instruments. And I think that causes a significant mismatch. So I know there are risks around returns and all of that, but I think developing and building the Nigerian economy is more important than anything else. So that would be my submission. I believe that a significant percentage should be invested in infrastructure, and that is currently being done, but more can be done. And the other question on fintechs and what we do about it, I believe fintech is a booming market and industry in Nigeria, and the fintech space has done tremendously well in such a short period of time. I believe of the top 10 unicorns, the companies that have grown, the fintech companies that have grown to $1 billion over the last year across the African continent, about 60–70% of that, of those companies are Nigerian companies. So the fintechs are onto something. I believe regulations can be put around it to ensure that no fintech goes rogue, and to ensure that investors' monies are protected and they are doing the right business the right way. And just the final comment from the distinguished Senate President, His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio, on encouraging the youth. I believe that the President has shown that he believes in the youth. The Nigerian youths are one of the most talented youths anywhere in the world. And once you work hard and you have the right qualifications and you don't take shortcuts, I believe that the system would recognize you ultimately. So thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. God bless.
I think the nominee has acquitted himself very creditably. Is it the view of the Senate that he be allowed to bow and take leave of the Senate? Those who are supposed to say aye. Aye. Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. Well done, well done.